Stories about what is happening is not what's happening. Stories about what is happening is not what's happening. It feels really weird, that sentence, like it's not quite right. Stories about what are happening is not what's happening. Yeah, that sentence is wrong. But we get the gist of it. We get the gist of it. So today and yesterday, in my free time, I've been trying not to watch TV or go on the internet so much. So I was listening to these talks about cults and this idea of cults. And I've spoken about it a lot in the past, and I feel like there is an attraction from my side to that subject. And I think it's because I can recognize through non-duality that in a way I've been in a cult. And I can also recognize that society is a cult. Like, so not only non-duality, but also society. And I don't say that in a victim way, and everybody's definition of a cult is different. It's, to me, what a cult is this dogmatic belief of stories, I suppose. And it's a belief that they are true, a belief that they are real, and an attachment to that. It's not necessarily a group of people. I think that's maybe there is more of what's defined as a cult, as a group of people, but it's not necessarily that. But there is also that area of cults where you form a group and you become isolated from society. To me, it's more this dogmatic belief of ideas and this belief that they are the truth. And I feel, for me, even though we contradict our stories about ourselves when we say, for me, we can't really remember, we can only remember ourselves from this perspective in this moment. So from this moment, when I look back on the story of Lisa, like, what I feel is that I could have got involved in any religion or any philosophical system. I feel like all religions and most philosophies are always pointing back to oneness, even sciences. I could have even got really deeply involved in science. So eventually they all come back to this oneness, or God moving through you, or this wholeness. Yeah, and I feel like I could have got involved in any of it. Like, I'm really susceptible to beliefs and ideas. Like, my mind is really susceptible to breaking down old beliefs and finding new ones. Like, and pushing the boundaries and stepping outside of the box and looking at it from different angles. And I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to this talk have that momentum happening for them as well. But I kind of feel like non-duality, which I think is in all religions and philosophical ideas, well, not on all philosophical ideas, but a lot, like when it eventually comes down to it. But mythology, I mean, it's what our society is based on in the end, even though it doesn't feel like that. What was I going to say? I forgot. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say to that point. Yeah, most people are attracted to these ideas, are listening to this talk. I really can't remember. Yeah, I have to start again. I've completely forgotten what I was talking about. I know what I was talking about, but I can't remember the thread of it at all. Like often you sit there and it just pops back in, but not tonight. So basically I'm talking about stories and these philosophies, and I was super susceptible to these ideas. And the last couple of days, or yesterday it started, or maybe a few days before that, I started listening to this particular cult that formed, this Mormon cult, this extreme Mormon cult that was about the end of days. And just listening to their ideas, firstly what it did is it made me realize like how much when you really go into Christianity, like a lot of it sounds like non-duality. Like a lot of what they were talking about was giving up control and letting like God's word speak through you. And I realized, you know, if I had been in America and near these Mormon people, like I could have so easily fallen into that, because there's something really beautiful in that. But there's something also really dangerous in it as well. And what's dangerous in it is this dogmatic belief in anything, this attachment to ideas. Like it sends us crazy as humans. And these polarities of right and wrong, good and bad, should, shouldn't, like are the polarities of the way in which we think. And our stories about ourselves, our stories about society, our stories about others. And basically what I was following was this lady who got involved in this cult-like teaching, and before that she had raised 6 children, and she got into it, and then she finally killed her last 2 children because she believed that's what God was telling her to do. That was God's word. And you could say that she's gone mad, like that's mental illness. But if you really examine like all our thought systems, like, I mean, I know that that's extreme, but if you look at our society, we also do really extreme things. I'm not saying that she was sane, like, I mean, madness and sanity is like an odd conversation. Like there is certain, like I've seen people have psychosis where they really lose touch with like the collective reality. But with her, like she still had like a connection to collective reality. And the way in which she went mad was, or where she went really extreme, was in this idea of God speaking through her, like letting God speak through her. And God spoke through her and through others in their organization and said that the kids had like dark energies in them, and that the best thing for them was to die or to move on to the next realm. And this, like this is also happening in our society. Like for example, to me, our concept of trade and money and capitalism is a form of madness, but we will take that to be right and true and fair. Like our justice system is a form of madness to me. There's good elements to it because it helps us as a collective work together and to function, but there's also lots of madness in it, but we believe it to be true. The other thing that we believe to be true is that we are somebody inside these bodies that are separate entities that have control over our life. And we take that as truth. Society takes that as a truth. Like there's so many stories, like the idea that you have a child, like that doesn't seem like a mad idea, but when you really break it down, like the idea that you possess a child, that you own a child, we need that language in order to function, but we take it as truth. I am your mother. You are my mother. I am somebody which has a mother. Like Khaleesi certainly doesn't look to me like her mother or not mother. She's just like, feed me, woman, feed me. Where's the food? Chicken? Where's the chicken? Give me the chicken. Walk me, woman. She's not really saying that. She can't speak. Just sometimes. Joking. So all of these things we take as truth. Like we take as truth that what's behind me is called a wall, and that's what it is, a wall. And it's happening so quickly all the time, like our ability to name things, our ability to tell story about our environment, that it becomes fact. I remember when I lived in Australia, like going on a tour or something, or being told about like the Aborigine people and how they knew their environment through singing. And that really like sent fireworks off in my brain, like to know your environment through song would be a completely different environment. So they retracked and retraced their environments through singing songs. But can you imagine knowing your environment through music? We are so conditioned to believe our stories about us. And even when I speak in the positive, so when I start telling you what you are rather than what you're not, that is a story, which is totally mind-blowing. Mind is like, yeah, but I must be able to know myself through a story. But you can't know yourself through a story. You can't know God through a story. But yet God knows everything. Like this is known. The stories are known. And that only happens in this moment. It's instant. It's right here. And even if you take that as a belief, so you take this as your new belief in which you're going to hold up to the world and proclaim to be, that isn't it. That's got nothing to do with who you are. You're trying to talk around who you are, but that's not who you are. So stories you tell yourself about who you are isn't who you are. Even the story of God moving through us, of there is no choice, there is no chooser, there is nobody here. This is a story which can become your new cult, which is super annoying when you meet people like that. And they're always like, who? Maybe you are one of those people that's preaching it to people all the time. Yes, but there's nobody speaking, so I'm not preaching. Yeah. I'm sure I've been that, I'm sure I'm that person often. I'm not excluded from that. I remember recently, maybe it was last year. Yeah, it was last year actually. I remember getting stoned, and I thought that people at this party were asking me about non-duality, and internally I was like, oh, I really don't want to speak about this. But because they were asking, it came out and I started speaking about it, and because I was so stoned I couldn't really perceive what was happening, and then I suddenly realized, oh, they're really not asking me about non-duality, and I just got off on this rant about non-duality. And internally, like, I don't like to really talk about it unless somebody's really interested. Like, I don't really like to talk about it. So maybe I'm giving myself a hard time, like I'm not really a preacher, but I do this stuff online, which I'm sure people find preachy. But in my past, I'm sure I was. Yeah. Like language and communication has got nothing to do with non-duality in a way. Like language is just a practicality. Like you say, I have been shopping. You don't have to say nobody has been shopping. Not Lisa has been shopping. You don't even need to bring it up in conversation, because conversation, like the way in which you think and speak, has got nothing to do with non-duality. It might make you more free on the human level because your brain isn't going into neurotic thinking so much, so it's like more settled, but that's actually nothing to do with non-duality. Like, non-duality is this presence which is experiencing right now, which isn't separate from everything that's happening. There isn't even a presence that's separate. There isn't even a consciousness that's separate from what's happening. That consciousness is everything. It doesn't even need to be talked about, but yet it gets talked about. And it's a total mystery as to where words come from. Like, the person is always thinking it's me and always feels like it's my mind in time that is producing this. And that's a functioning in which we can discuss. But when we come to this moment, it's actually that everything is coming from no place and no time, from absolute mystery. And that is so freaking beautiful. That is so beautiful. That is love. To me, that is love. To see that words right now come from nothing, no thing. So if it's not a thing, then it's everything by default. The room comes from not a place. The tree comes from not a place. The bookshelf comes from not a place, not a thing, nothing. So you could also see the tree comes from everything. The bookcase comes from everything. My words come from everything. This is everything speaking, everything looking, everything hearing. You could also say consciousness if you want, but consciousness is, you could, like, the consciousness is misunderstood. You could also say consciousness is a functioning, but yeah. It doesn't matter, these details. It's more this resonance with what's being spoken. That this is God. So when you say everything, that also could be replaced with God. Or when you say nothing, you could also replace that with God. So it's God speaking, God hearing, God planting, bookshelf, bookshelf godding, no, God bookshelfing. But the problem when you say God is that this goes right to the heart of the human's narcissism. I am God. Yes, yes, baby. Dookie. I am. I always knew I was God. I always knew I was the center of the earth. Hello, Yi. I'm talking to my computer, aren't I? You see, that's the problem with mentioning that word, is that storyteller, that illusory self, loves that, because then it feels very superior to other beings. And often the ego and the person, the separate sense of self, feels very inferior, so it's always looking for things to make it feel better about itself. And that's not it too. This is very humbling in a way, because it's saying that you, the illusory you, is a functioning, and it doesn't really exist. But the watcher, that which is watching, which isn't a thing and is all things, is God. So that also means on the depth, on the deepest level, that there is nothing that can attack you, there's nothing that can hurt you, there's nothing that can take away you, freedom, that sense of being. Pain and pleasure can come, but there's nothing that can take that inherent sense of being, that inherent looking. So there's never a place in which you can be unsafe. The person can feel fear, but that which you are isn't afraid. That fear is part of what happens in the human bodies. They are what we call mammals, and they have these fear. I don't know what that's called. Raptors, no. These fear things in the brain. And this is all that's wanted, is to know yourself. It's not wanted the end of fear. It's not wanted the end of arguments or the end of pleasure and pain. That's part of being human. It's what's wanted is to know yourself on the deeper level. That's the end of seeking. It's this home, this feeling at home. The person always feels like it's lost home, even if that's very subtle. It always feels like it's on a mission to try to get somewhere because it's kind of lost something, but it doesn't really know what it's lost or what it's looking for. And it gets all these ideas, and it likes to go on missions and tell itself its stories about these missions. But it can't really get to that freedom, because that freedom is what you are. It can make the human more balanced and make the life more comfortable and be more at peace. But the freedom is this moment. It's what's happening. So to me, the way in which non-duality is to be lived with in order to not become cult-like is to be human on the human level. Like, so to know these differences. So what it is to be human and what it is to be a more balanced human. So you be human, you understand what the human is up to. So you understand, like, if you're shouting at somebody with anger, like underneath that, more than likely what you want is intimacy, or that you're afraid. So you kind of like have this deep insight into being human and what it is to be human. And that ideally it's better not to shout at someone, like if you want a more peaceful life. So you kind of like become a more wise human, a more balanced human, a more understanding human. So, and the reason that you need to do that is because it's learning about this cult-like mentality that can appear in the human, and that using non-duality to make you have a better life or to feel better about yourself is not the answer. It can help the human have a better life. That the ideas can be relaxing for the human, but to me, really becoming more balanced is really getting to know the human and getting to know what it's like to be human, and becoming very unjudgmental about what it is to be human. So there's that on that side. And then there's the other side where it's deeply known who you are, but that's not being used. So this deep knowing of who you are in every moment, this deep connection to source, and this expansiveness, like this energetic shift. So you're not limited anymore, you're this expansiveness, and the character is appearing in that, rather than prior. It's like the character is like center focused and so important, and you don't know who you are, or that you do know who you are, but it's still hidden in the background. So it's this shift round. So right now, who you are is everything, but that's not conceptual. That's experiential. It's like a shift in perception. And that's happening now, even if you feel limited as a person. If you really explore what you're feeling, you'll notice that there is no boundaries on anything that you feel. The hearing and the heard are one, the seeing and the seen is one, the smelling and the smelt is one, the feeling and the felt is one. The thinking and the object is one. So there is no subject-object. It's this shift in perception. And then the human becomes more balanced, but it's not trying to be a perfect human, because that will trigger or that will just elongate the seeking. You understand the limitations of what it is to be human, like our tendencies to be cult-like about everything we do, to believe in ourselves, to not want to be vulnerable, to want to be all powerful, or want to be the victim, or whatever it is, or to have these like ingrained responses to situations, to have annoyance, to have fear, to have jealousy, but not hiding that, to be real with it, and also to know that it's not necessarily yours. Like there's like, you could call telepathic beings. Like as soon as you walk into a room, you're feeling other people's feelings. You're kind of having other people's thoughts. I mean, where does your thought begin and another end? And I don't just mean that like that you're picking up other people's thoughts. I mean it as in like everything that you think now is a result of what other people have thought. You can't think outside of this society. You can't think outside of what you've been taught. Somebody else invented the word humble. Somebody else invented the word you. And you're using all of that and then thinking. I don't know if that's making sense. But in the end, it doesn't really matter. Your freedom is what is. It's what's beyond the person. What is here now. This is the freedom. This is the freedom. As soon as you start getting into the perfect human, you start getting into cult fucking land. Ooh. Cult fucking land. Ooh. She swore. Yes, I remember somebody once sent me an email saying the reason I sweared was because repressed sexuality. Yeah, so because it's like following this ideal, like it's about power, like this ideal of a perfect person, the ideal of them having things that I don't have, of them being better than me, of them having a perfect life. And so this person, they believe that they are enlightened, or that they are free on the human level, or that they are free of all conditions and habits. And then this creates a cult-like mentality, because that's impossible for that to happen. There is always going to be habits and conditionings appearing in someone. And we can't tell what's perfect or what's not, what's the right one or what's the wrong one. That's what the cult would then have to define. So it's good to feel happy, it's good to feel joy, it's good to feel peace, it's good to feel love, it's good to feel monogamy. So that's what the cult has to define. So then everyone has to try to be like that. Or the other cult might be, it's good to be polyamorous, it's good to lie, it's good to cheat, it's good to have all these negative feelings, and then that becomes the cult. And it's seeing the difference. Like human is human. We have these ideas, we have these behaviors, they are going to improve, they're going to get better. You're going to have some people that are more in denial and unconscious on the human level, and then you'll have more which are more evolved and can see deeper into themselves. But that's just being human. Everyone can learn to be more evolved. But having love in your heart or kindness in your heart isn't better than the other ones in terms of enlightenment, awakening. It's better for more peaceful relationships, more peaceful and harmonious personality. It's knowing these differences. We've defined what is goodness. To Khaleesi, being nice isn't a good quality. Who cares about being nice to Khaleesi? She's like, rip the chicken's head off, lick all its blood up, roll in it, get all the blood all over me. She doesn't care about being nice. It's a human condition which we have imposed onto ourselves. If you are not nice, then you are going to hell. Although I will say I prefer to hang out with nice people, but that's not about awakening. Awakening is that which is experiencing now, which is love. Love, 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 love. Well, I have done a lot of talking